Welcome to the deep dive.
Hmm.
Okay, let's jump right in. The big news. Microsoft has decided to stop making the Surface Studio 2 Plus Day.
Yeah, that's definitely sent some ripples through the creative community, hasn't it?
It really has. And, it's worth thinking about why that machine, the Surface Studio, built such a loyal base to begin with.
Right. It wasn't just, another all-in-one PC. It offered something pretty distinct, a different way for creatives to actually work.
Exactly. That whole design philosophy, this huge, beautiful touchscreen you could pull right down, almost like a digital drafting table. I remember Mark Sullivan at Fast Company talking about Panos Panay's original vision for it.
Oh, yeah.
Transforming the desk, basically, into a studio.
Oh.
That whole idea making digital creation feel more, hands-on. It really seemed to connect.
And it was a statement piece for Microsoft, too, wasn't it? It showed they weren't just playing in the PC space. They wanted to push what a creative workstation could actually be.
Definitely. And they smartly brought in the Surface Pen, the dial, tools from their other devices to make it feel intuitive.
That hands-on feel.
And you can see it worked for artists, designers, photographers.
Yeah.
Lots of folks. The reaction online to it being discontinued, it's a real disappointment. People are worried about what fills that gap.
So let's unpack that. What was it about the studio that made it so essential for those users? What are the core things they're now missing or looking for?
Okay, yeah, let's get into the specifics. Beyond just looking cool, the absolute star was that 28-inch pixel sense display. 4,500 by 3,000 pixels.
Huge resolution.
Huge. And that 3.2 aspect ratio. That's not typical widescreen.
No, it's taller, more like a piece of paper, which makes sense for layout work, illustration.
Exactly. And then there was the hinge, that zero-gravity hinge. You could just effortlessly pull the screen down to, like a 20-degree angle.
Yeah, that drafting angle made it comfortable for drawing or detailed touch work for hours. It was clever engineering.
Very clever. And apparently that 3.2 ratio was super intentional for creative workflows. Stevie Bathish from the Surface team even talked about how it was calibrated for true-to-scale work.
Meaning what you see is what you get, size-wise, when you print it out.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Which is, critical if you're doing professional print design or something similar. Precision matters.
No doubt. And the initial reviews reflected that, right? People were impressed.
Oh, yeah. The Verge called the display gorgeous, said the hinge was genuinely impressive. I saw an illustrator, Lawrence Mann, mention how it almost replaced his multi-device setup, like his Cintiq setup.
That's high praise, comparing it to dedicated professional gear like a Wacom Cintiq.
It really is. It seemed to deliver on that promise,
Yeah.
A fluid, intuitive, creative space. But it wasn't perfect. There were definitely criticisms.
Right. Let's talk about the downsides. The price tag was always significant.
Very significant. And even with that high price, the hardware inside wasn't always the absolute latest, was it?
No, that was a common point. Brian Posey over at Redmond Mag pointed out that even when the Studio 2 launched, the components weren't exactly bleeding edge for that price point.
And that's the classic all-in-one problem, isn't it? The design is sleek, integrated,
but totally locked down. You can't upgrade it easily. Like Posey said, when the CPU or GPU gets old, you're stuck. You can't just upgrade the guts and keep that amazing screen.
The whole unit becomes obsolete, essentially.
Pretty much.
Andrew Cunningham at Ars Technica hit on this too with his Studio 2 Plus Sergi. He called the internals previous generation.
Ouch.
Yeah. He even suggested Microsoft might have had to tweak Windows 11 requirements just to keep the older Studio 2 compatible.
That's telling. And I think Brett House at AnandTech also raised eyebrows about the storage choice, a hybrid drive.
Right. In a premium machine like that, people expected a full, fast SSD, especially for handling large creative files. A hybrid drive felt like a compromise.
So, despite the innovation and the price, users weren't always getting top-of-the-line performance, which kind of leads us to why Microsoft finally pulled the plug.
Well, the reporting, like from Zach Bowden at Windows Central, suggests it's about focus. Microsoft's Surface team is apparently shifting towards products with, bigger sales potential, more mainstream stuff.
So the Surface Studio, being high-end and targeting a relatively niche market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Probably didn't fit the new strategy. That, combined with the high price and the lag in specs, likely made it hard to justify keeping it going.
It's that tension, isn't it, between pushing boundaries with cool, innovative designs and the practicalities of selling enough units at the right price with current tech.
Yeah. A tough balancing act. So for the listener, maybe someone who had a studio or was dreaming of one, What now?
Well, some might look at the Surface Laptop Studio. It's got pen support, a different kind of hinge.
But smaller, right? A laptop form factor. Not that huge canvas.
Exactly, not the same immersive experience. And if you look at other touchscreen all-in-ones out there,
What about them?
they often miss key things. Maybe the resolution isn't as high, or they lack that specific folding hinge for the drafting mode. Surface style support is usually missing too.
Like what's an example?
The HP Omni Studio X is a touchscreen AIO, but I believe its resolution is standard HD, not the near 5K of the Studio, and the tilt is much more limited. Those aren't small differences for a visual professional.
Yeah, that changes the workflow completely. I even saw comments online, like Hanley Gibbons on Windows Central, just wishing Microsoft would sell the display as a standalone monitor.
Right, it shows what people really valued, that large, high-quality, interactive screen.
So the wish list seems to be big, high-res touch display, that clever hinge, pen dial support, but with powerful modern internals, and maybe some way to upgrade it down the line.
Modularity, that's the missing piece, which highlights how specific the needs are for digital artists. They need performance, yes, but also tools that feel right, that integrate with how they physically create.
It's interesting, some people are even trying to build their own solutions. Saw a thread on Reddit, on FurBuild apps.
Oh, really? A DIY Surface Studio?
Kind of. This person was planning a build for their wife, an illustrator, who apparently had some quality control problems with her Studio 2 Plus Ben.
Okay, so what was the plan?
They were focusing on power and display quality thinking like an i7 or i9 processor. A really nice Asus ProArt OLED monitor.
High-end components. But what about the touch and the hinge?
That's the thing. It seemed like they were de-emphasizing the integrated touch aspect, prioritizing the monitor quality and the PC's horsepower.
So, building a powerful workstation with a great screen, but maybe not trying to replicate the exact studio form factor.
Right. The community gave loads of advice on parts, coolers, motherboards, the whole 9 yards, and the cost looked like it might even come in under the Surface Studio.
But, and this is the big but, isn't it?
Yeah.
As one commenter, Simwork, I think, pointed out, you can build a beast of a PC, you can get an amazing monitor, maybe even a touchscreen one.
Replicating that seamless integrated hinge and touch experience with off-the-shelf parts.
That's the real challenge, finding a monitor stand that does what the Studio Hinge did and integrating it all cleanly. It's tough.
Okay, but this is where it gets interesting, because it looks like a new player might be stepping directly into that void. Have you heard about the Windows Touch Studio?
From Tailored Desktop, yes, I have. And it seems explicitly designed to pick up where the Surface Studio left off, particularly for creatives.
And they seem to have learned from the Surface Studio's limitations, right?
Yeah.
Especially upgradability.
That's the key thing. It's modular. The PC part, the brains, is a separate mini PC unit.
Ah, so it's not all baked into the display unit.
Exactly. Which tackles that obsolescence issue head on. If the processor gets slow in a few years, you upgrade the mini PC part, but you keep the display.
That makes a lot of sense. What kind of specs are we talking about in that mini PC?
Pretty powerful stuff, actually. It uses an AMD Ryzen 7 8845HS processor, which has strong integrated Radeon 780M graphics. You can configure it with up to 96 gigs of DDR5 RAM.
96 gigs, wow.
Yeah, serious memory. And up to 8 terabytes of NVMe SSD storage using dual PCIe 4.0 slots. So very fast storage for big files.
Okay, that sounds capable. What about ports and connectivity? That's always important.
It seems well equipped. Dual 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, dual USB 4.0, which supports Thunderbolt 3.
Nice. High bandwidth for peripherals.
Right. HDMI 2.1, DisplayPort 2.1, standard USB 3.2 ports, headphone jack, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2. There's even an Oculink port, which is interesting for potentially adding an external GPU later, and they bundle an 8-port USB hub with power delivery.
Okay, they seem to have thought about connectivity. And the price, you mentioned the Surface Studio was pricey.
This is a big point. The Windows Touch Studio starts at $2,795.
Compared to the Surface Studio 2 plus launch price of, what was it, $4,500?
Exactly. So significantly cheaper. And they apparently include a decent keyboard and mouse and offer software bundles for creatives, too.
Okay, so powerful, modular, better price.
Yeah.
What about the display? Because that was the heart of the Surface Studio.
It's a 27-inch 4K touchscreen, so slightly smaller than the Studio's 28-inch, but still large and high-res at 3840 by 2160.
And color accuracy, critical for creative work.
They're claiming professional-grade stats. 99% Adobe RGB coverage and a delta E under 1. That means very accurate color reproduction. It's got HDR, 400 nits brightness, edge-to-edge glass.
Stylus support?
Yes. Pressure-sensitive stylus compatibility, supports 10-point multi-touch as well, and it has an 8-megapixel webcam built in, plus speakers.
Okay, sounds like a proper studio display. Now, the crucial part, the stand. Does it do the hinge thing?
It seems to offer very similar versatility. They say it has a 90-degree tilt, so it can lay completely flat.
Like the drafting mode.
Exactly. Plus 80 degrees of swivel, 360 rotation, and a good height adjustment range using a pneumatic lift. So you get that positional flexibility.
So if you put them side by side, the Windows Touch Studio versus the old Surface Studio 2 plus amp.
You're looking at a very similar concept. Large, high-quality touchscreen with a flexible stand aimed at creatives. But the Touch Studio offers potentially much more powerful and modern hardware.
Plus the modularity for future upgrades.
Right, that's a huge advantage. And at a lower price point, it really seems like a direct response to the gap Microsoft left.
Okay, so wrapping this up, Microsoft discontinuing the Surface Studio 2 Plus definitely left a hole for creatives who love that specific form factor.
Yeah, that unique blend of a big interactive canvas and that versatile hinge. Other options, like the Laptop Studio or other AIOs, they offer parts of the equation, but not quite the whole package.
Or you could go DIY, build a powerful machine, but struggle to replicate that integrated touch and hinge setup easily.
But now we see alternatives like this Windows Touch Studio emerging, purpose-built, it seems, for that same user. Modular design, powerful specs, flexible display. It looks like a very strong contender.
Especially for you, the listener. If you were in that Surface Studio camp, this could be a viable path forward, maybe even a better one long-term with the upgradability.
Absolutely.
So maybe the final thought here is, what parts of the Surface Studio experience were really essential for your workflow? And now that it's gone, what kind of innovation might this gap actually spark? Could we see even more interesting hardware designed specifically for creative hands?
It's definitely an interesting space to keep an eye on. The needs are clearly there.
Indeed. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.